Chapter 3. Night Flight. It was well into the midnight hour when Sterling flew back to camp. The first snow of the season had fallen, and the big wilderness appeared as if it had been tucked under a glistening white blanket. Sterling approached the campsite and hovered over Donner. "Donner, wake up! Wake up! The first snow is here!" Sterling cheerfully proclaimed. She opened her eyes, which sparkled with joy as she hastily stood up. As Donner shook the snow off her antlers, she happily shouted, "Ha ha ha! The first snow! It's the first snow of the year! We should be able to fly soon!" It took Donner a few minutes to notice that while she was standing on the ground, she had to look up to see Sterling's face. You're flying! You're really flying! You're standing on air! Oh, wait until I wake Blitzen!" Donner screamed with complete surprise. "Too late. I'm already awake. So what is it that you're shouting about, Donner?" sleepily asked Blitzen as he stretched his legs and yawned. "What am I shouting about? You have to ask? Look around you. There's snow on the ground. Snow, Blitzen, snow, the first snow. Look at Sterling. He's flying. He's really flying." Donner could no longer contain her excitement as she sprang into the air. "Now, in order to fly, you... Sterling tried to explain, but he was too late. Donner didn't need instructions. She was a natural, soaring past the snow-filled trees with the ease of a dove. Donner dipped her antlers to the left, then to the right to avoid the sagging branches. She arched her head back, then gracefully looped backward toward the snow-filled campsite and stood next to Sterling in the air. "Come on, Blitzen! Shake the snow loose and come fly with us! It's so easy! Come on!" Donner excitedly called out to Blitzen. Guys, I'm too cold," Blitzen replied with a shiver as he tried to shake the snow off of himself. "Too cold? Come on, Blitzen!" shouted Sterling. "Your fur is way too thick for you to be cold. You're not afraid, are you?" "Of course he's not afraid," Donner shouted in Blitzen's defense. "Come on, Blitzen, show Mr. Sterling here that you're not afraid to fly." She paused and slowly landed on the snow. "Come on, Blitzen, show Sterling you're not afraid. Watch me." She leaped forward and circled the snowy campsite several times. Sterling spoke to Blitzen patiently as he slowly ascended higher toward Donner. "Blitzen, why do you always doubt your abilities? You can't always be weak in spirit. We're your friends. Trust us. It's easy to fly. Come on, try it." "I know I can fly. I'm just too cold to fly now," Blitzen said, trying to hide any uncertainty he might have from the others. "Go on, guys. I'll catch up in a few minutes." Sterling and Donner questioningly looked down to Blitzen. "Seriously, I'll be fine. Go on," he called out with a chuckle. "Leave him. If he doesn't want to fly now, then I'm not going to wait around for him," shouted Donner impatiently to Sterling as they circled higher and higher into the air. Unable to hide her disappointment, she shouted down to Blitzen, "You just stay put then. We'll be back for you after we've finished flying." "Donner," snapped Sterling with a scolding look, "I know our leader is not upset at me. You're the one who called him weak in spirit," frustratingly replied Donner. Sterling worriedly looked down at Blitzen, not only his best friend, but his childhood friend. But it wasn't long before he and Donner were lost in the magic of the night flight as the snow majestically drifted down toward the ground. They flew in large, looping circles, higher and higher into the sky, before free-falling back toward the earth and lazily skimming their hooves over the fresh snow. The sensation of the night's snowy air trickled through their thick fur. Donner was with her best friend, her love and mentor. She flew close to him, drawn in by the caring aura strongly radiating within him. As she pranced in the air with him, she noticed that Sterling's concentration was on something else, something far down below. She looked down where he stared, gasped, and pointed excitedly. "I know. I see them," Sterling said calmly. "I just hope that Blitzen smelled their scent." Back down on the ground, Blitzen was talking to himself. "I'm not afraid to fly. I'm just too nervous to try. Sterling had no right to talk to me that way in front of Donner." It was then that Blitzen heard thumping sounds. He looked up and far away, but he couldn't see anything through the darkness and snow. Raising his nose up, Blitzen sniffed the wind and picked up a strong and worrying scent, the smell of wolves. Wolves! Timber wolves! I can smell their scent growing stronger by the second. There must be at least 8 of them, and they're getting closer. I have to get out of here. As Blitzen leaped over some fallen trees, he could hear the wolves' legs pound fast and hard against the freshly fallen snow. He quickly looked back to see if he could spot them, but it was still too dark. He ran up a steep hill, struggling with each step. His speed, combined with the thick snow which was falling hard and hastily, blurred his vision. Meanwhile, up above in the snowy night sky, Sterling and Donner were trying to formulate a plan. "Sterling, aren't we going to help him?" asked Donner with great concern. Sterling looked at her, then back down. "Let's wait and see if he'll fly. He's heading toward a cliff. I'm almost positive that he'll fly." Sterling continued to stare down toward the intense situation growing below him. "Well, what if he doesn't jump?" Donner asked, questioning Sterling's confidence. He will. I just know it. But if he doesn't, then I'll guess he'll just have to grow up all on his own." Donner, more nervous than before, flicked her ears back and forth, listening. And if he doesn't grow up, he'll be eaten up. You're our leader, and he's afraid, Sterling. And most importantly, he's our friend. Maybe this isn't the time for him to grow up. He needs our help." Donner, growing more fidgety by the minute, found it more difficult to stabilize herself in the air as she watched the wolves gain precious ground on their friend. Sterling's voice grew strong as he spoke with an air of authority. "Donner, you go down there and distract the wolves while I talk Blitzen into flying. Well, don't just float there staring at me. Go! Move it!" The 2 flying reindeer flung themselves at top speed downward as the snowflakes seemed to thicken around them. "I can't outrun them," Blitzen whimpered to himself. He was frightened, and his breath escaped in frantic puffs from the exhaustive run. Suddenly and frantically, he skidded to a halt. "Oh, no! I'm at the edge of a cliff!" Blitzen paused and took a step back. Looking over his shoulder, he saw several wolves racing toward him. Through the darkness, the moonlight bounced off the snow to magnify the red glow of their eyes. He moved closer to the cliff's edge and looked down. Only snowflakes fell into the darkness below. Blitzen inched even closer to the edge. As he braced himself to lead outward into the sky, he panicked and quickly backpedaled. He nervously looked around and saw the wolves closing in behind him. They looked so vicious with their glowing eyes as they snarled and snapped their teeth. Suddenly, from out of nowhere, something flew down at them. Donner was trying to distract them. The wolves leaped up into the snowy night sky, snapping at her hooves, but Donner stayed just high enough out of their dangerous reach. Donner's distraction gave Blitzen a few moments of precious time, allowing Blitzen to turn back to the cliff's edge. He peered carefully over the steep edge and saw... "Sterling!" "No time for chit-chat, my friend. You must listen to me." Sterling's voice calmed as he continued. "Blitzen, I shouldn't have spoken to you the way I did in front of Donner. You're not weak in spirit. I'm sorry I ever said that, but you know how I am. I always want to bring out the best in others. I really meant no harm, but none of that matters as much as what you're now facing. Now is the time that you must focus on only one thing. You must jump, Blitzen. You must." I can't jump, Sterling." "You can jump, and you can fly, too. You must. Just stay calm, Blitzen, and move closer to the edge. That's right. Closer, closer, No, no, don't stop. The wolves are getting closer. That's it. Easy now. Watch your step. No, Blitzen, don't stop. The wolves are almost on top of you. Jump! Jump now! Jump! But Blitzen was too afraid. Sterling watched helplessly as two wolves leapt into the air toward his best friend. Then, without warning, something bumped Blitzen off the cliff. It was Donner. She watched Blitzen tumble and fall with the snowflakes and into the darkness. "Betcha fly now," she whispered with a smile. Quickly following behind the tumbling Blitzen, Donner and Sterling flew after him. Sterling's natural strength and speed allowed him to reach Blitzen first. "Blitzen, you can fly, but you have to relax. Just relax. Now move your legs as though you were running on solid ground." Blitzen relaxed long enough to listen to his friends, and slowly but surely he began to move his legs. By this time, Donner had caught up to them. "Hey, you're doing just fine," she called out to him in support. Blitzen began to giggle, then laugh as he grew more and more comfortable in the sky. "I'm doing it! I'm flying! Yes!" he shouted, proud of his accomplishment. The wolves quickly disappeared from their thoughts as the three flew upward, play in the night snow. Oh, how much fun they had! No one spoke. It was the magic in their silence and the quietness of the snow that thrilled their souls, combined with the smile of a quarter moon that watched them frolic in his playground in the sky. It wasn't long before they went their separate ways. Donner flew closer to the ground to get a better look at the frozen lake below her. Blitzen flew higher and closer to the moon, while Sterling was on the opposite side of Donner, but much, much higher up. There they each explored their own skills. Blitzen decided to go to the extremes, flying higher and higher into the sky. The higher he flew, the colder it became. Blitzen, new to night flight, didn't know that flying too high could be dangerous. The cold air started to freeze his antlers, making it very difficult for him to keep his head up and navigate safely. As he continued flying higher, the air became thinner and harder to breathe because of the lack of oxygen it contained. Blitzen flew too high up, and soon nature had its way. Blitzen fell into unconsciousness from the lack of breathable air and spiraled downward toward the frozen lake. Donner looked up at just the right moment to see an unconscious Blitzen falling toward her. She shouted up to Sterling as he flew much higher up and across from her and pointed above him. He turned and saw Blitzen just as he fell past him. Not a second to waste, Sterling spun around and flew down toward Blitzen as Donner flew toward them both. Sterling, racing with incredible speed, reached his fallen friend and continued to follow him down toward the frozen lake. He inched closer to Blitzen and carefully placed his right antler under Blitzen's left antler. Donner, following Sterling's example, gently placed her left antler under his right. After a few quick adjustments, both Sterling and Donner lifted their heads up and safely secured their friend within their antlers. But they couldn't completely stop Blitzen's fall because of his massive weight. Then, as though Donner and Sterling could read each other's mind, they swayed from left to right as they descended down. This swaying motion helped to ease the burden of Blitzen slipping free. They gracefully swayed with wide and long swings. It was so beautiful, almost as though their movement were being orchestrated by music. When they'd finally reached the frozen lake, they softly let Blitzen slide free. The huge reindeer slid lifelessly in large, looping circles across the frozen lake before he slowly spun to a halt. Donner sighed with relief as she landed in front of the unconscious Blitzen. She saw Sterling silently land on the frozen lake and watched him elegantly walk toward his fallen friend. He glanced at her and nodded, implying, "Job well done." Donner couldn't help but to blush. As the snow continued to fall, Sterling took a step toward Donner and tripped over something underneath the snow. Then he slipped as he tried to balance himself and accidentally tumbled into Donner. He knocked her down and they both slid backward with their legs entangled. Slowly, Blitzen began to stir. He opened his eyes and spoke hazily as he looked about side to side. What happened? His eyes opened even wider when he saw his two friends tangled together, with Donner lying on top of Sterling. Blitzen jokingly spoke with a big grin. "What's going on, guys? Something here I don't know about?" Sterling, embarrassed, stammered for words. No need to explain to me," Blitzen replied with a mischievous smile and a wink. Sterling sighed and plopped his head back into the snow-covered lake. Donner just laughed hysterically. The next few weeks were filled with aerial snowball fights, endurance runs, flight drills for longevity, more snowball fights, flying drills for hovering, running in the air drills, drills for soaring without moving their legs, and finally the ability to land and to take off silently. "I heard that. Elephant toes. I heard you land, Donner." "Stop calling me elephant toes, Sterling. I don't have elephant toes, and I'm tired of you picking on me. Blitzen, tell him you didn't hear me land. Tell him." Blitzen shrugged his huge shoulders before he cautiously replied, "Well, Donner, I did hear you land, too." Donner angrily stomped her hooves hard on the snow. "Urgh! I'm tired of this." "Cheer up, elephant toes. You're getting better. Ha ha!" Blitzen laughed. "Blitzen," interrupted Sterling, "you have elephant toes too, buddy. You're just as bad. So, gang, shall we all take our elephant toes to flight?" Donner batted her eyes and gave a slight pout to Sterling before sticking her tongue out at Blitzen. Landing practice continued until dark for the three friends. Much later that night, Donner asked, "Blitzen, how do you feel? Tomorrow evening we should reach the North Pole." Blitzen stared at her. "Totally fit. I feel as though I could take on the world, but I really won't know until tomorrow night. How do you feel?" "Oh, like my whole life is about to unfold before me." She smiled and then looked into the night sky and answered more sincerely, "I feel just great." "Well, you two won't feel so fantastic if you don't get your sleep," Sterling warned. Donner slowly and teasingly rolled her back toward him. "Yes, father," she replied mockingly. Sterling frowned, but Donner couldn't help giggling to herself as they fell asleep.